humanity. I love you all with all my heart and might. I'm Jam Jose Alonso Molina. I just uploaded this incredible video about the mathematics of this new dynamic. It's a lovely, beautiful dynamic, and it's based on one of my hobbies, Magic the Gathering, which is essentially a game, and there is a lot of mathematics in it, and it's turn-based, so that leads to all sorts of strategies, and it's great. So there's formats, and because there is formats, each format has its own rules, a set of rules, and it's an interesting game. And because that's the foundation of the game, I essentially chose to build a deck, which is the set of cards that you use to play a game or a matchup or whatever. And I decided to build it using the format of my choice, which is Modern, which includes cards from original sets since Mirrodin, which was back in 2003 or 2004, which is when I was getting started with Magic. So I love that format because it takes cards from that very set, Mirrodin, to the latest. So because it's pretty much it's my era. So because of it, I build format, which I know, which is Modern. And because of it, I just decided to do this, and I was working on this idea for a very, very long time, but the cards didn't exist for the mathematics, and the dynamics that I wanted to play with would just work out in terms of, hypergeometric calculations and all these different rates that you need to hit because it's a mathematics game. So because of it, the cards weren't there, but now they are, and I just was able to release it, which is this deck, and it's a tribal deck of all decks. When you first start Magic, when you're little, you play with the sets that are released with the set, and I got started in 2001 on the 7th edition, and that's when I was in my first year of high school. So I was 12 or something, or 11. I think I was 11 because it was 2001, and I was to turn 12 in year 1, not year 9. So, or grade 9 or 9th grade or whatever you want to call it, high school, my first year of high school, and that was then. And I started with 7th, and then after that was Legions, Onslaught, and a third one, Scourge. And after that came 8th edition, and after 8th edition was Mirrodin, which was what Magic the Gathering is, the format. So I knew obviously the older stuff, but when I commercially got initiated, it was the set of 7th. So most of my base is that, because it was my first interaction with the game, and obviously you would have people would have the folders and things, and they have the collections, and you look at the cards, and they were like alpha and beta, and you're like in 2001 seeing these cards, and it was already, oh wow, you got alpha and beta. Now imagine that's what the price they are, right? Anyway, so I understand the game and the economics of the game and the market theory of it and the game theory of it, the tournament theory, everything that has to do with it, I understand. So the industry, I understand the metagame, all that, what it means. So then I wanted to do a tribal deck because my first deck, my dad bought me a deck that was a deck that came from the set, and at the time it was the release of Legions, and because Legion was just released, I got the deck of that set for Legion, and it was a soldiers deck. So it was a tribal deck, a tribal synergy, and it was soldiers at the time, cleric soldiers and stuff. And that's how I got started with Magic, with a white deck of tribal human soldiers. And there were cat soldiers, and there were all sorts of clerics, but they were all soldiers. So there was obviously the soldier war chief and all that. and the dynamics, right, of a tribal deck. And that was my initial, that was my, what ushered me into Magic the Gathering, that deck, my first deck. And I started building my entire foundation using that soldier tribal. And tribal really never really picked up, you know. It was always like elves and goblins and things like that, but it never really became like a thing, a force of nature when it came to like having an actual tribal deck that dominates. You know, for a while in Vintage you had merfolks and things like that, and this all, and then kind of out of it came like Burn, and Burn became like the meta, and eventually that was it. But never has there been a deck that's so dominant, you know, like for ages since the, so like a tribal deck that got started, you know, back in the day and still sustains in Vintage, or you know, modern, or any format, whichever format, doesn't really matter. If you think of it as a format, there's no tribal deck. You have sometimes, you know, a little bit of a meta, kind of like hiatus and things like that, and the tribal decks have a play and a percentage of the meta. But in real terms, there hasn't really been like an actual tribal deck, you know, because the Eldrazi's, you could say that, but then the Eldrazi got banned, right? Because the Eye of Ugin was just crazy, and the cards were just too powerful. It broke the meta, so they were bannings and things. So Eldrazi really never caught. It wasn't really, because it was considered more like, oh, it's cheating. That's no real Magic, is it? That's why the cards, you know, get restricted or banned and things, right? But I'm talking a little bit about the history of Magic, but if you understand what I mean, then there has been moments in which you have a dominant tribal deck, but it has never been a tribal deck that is fair, dominant, can compete in the meta, and it will sustain itself like an actual option. You know, I got 50% chance to win in this meta, most meta, say for example, if it's almost like a dominant mid-range, or like a, you know, a rock deck or something like that, you know, that would always work, you know, because you're just 50 chance kind of thing. So imagine something like that, but for tribal, like you can always play. Well, the cards are out, and I just got this new tribal deck, and it's elementals. And these elementals are very powerful. Is there's two real permanents that drive the entire deck, and it's Flamekin Harbinger as a one drop, a red, you know, and the other one is Thunderkin, or whatever, he's Awakener. Thunderkin Awakener. That's from like 20th edition, right, in 2019. And then the other one is from Lorwyn, which is 2007. So you see, it's been a long process for all these cards to come out. And then after that, then you got the latest, you know, the card that essentially put it together in the end. And it was like, okay, the mathematics make sense now. And that was Boltwave. And that card just came out in 2024. But it takes a while, as you know, to really map it out. And I finally got it. And this is an extremely powerful deck that is fair. No card in that deck can be banned if it stands on its own, because it's a tribal mechanic, it's a synergy. So it becomes like a flavor. But it's a dominant flavor that can beat you on turn 4. You know? And it's like 20 to 30% of the chances. And in a very solid position, is very dominant. It's very dominant, and does it very well, and very quick. And it doesn't have like, it's a very fair deck. If you look at it, it's just a tribal deck with powerful synergies. That's all it is. So, and it's very powerful. The mathematics are tight. So if you understand that, then you know, you understand Magic and what being on the play and being on the draw means, and the power of mulligan and doing it strategically if you have matchups that are 3-game, you know, matchups, and all these different dynamics. And then you understand the logic of the meta, which is this deck is fair against everyone, at least 50-50 chance, at least, and everyone. And then you have this ability to have a very powerful explosive turn 4 on the play, which is the opponent's third play, right? Third turn. So you're telling me that I say, your turn, and it was the end of my third turn, and then when you play your fourth, I lose. That's pretty fast for Magic, particularly for a tribal deck, right? You haven't even untapped your fourth turn and you lost at the end of your tapped out third turn, right? Because I'm on the play and I started it, so I'm on my first turn, I defeat you, and then you're tapped out on the third. That's very, mathematically speaking, that's a very common thing in Magic. And you would have a tapped out third, but you would have developed your game. You would have some appliance walk out, some creatures or some permanents or some synergy going, or some hand or a counter kind of my hand. But with this deck, that doesn't mean jack shit, because I go Cavern of Souls, so everything is uncounterable and things like that. So you have to, so it becomes very annoying and extremely powerful to play, and easy and simple, because it's 1, 2, 3. The logic is just, okay, so I turn the creatures and I just cast all these burn spells. That's all it is. So, but in a very quick, which doesn't really have, it's just that, and you have many ways to get to it, many. If the previous one that I did was 5 winning strategies, this one is more like 10 avenues. So depending on how the game, and then cyber, as usual with the cyber, I leave the cyber open because it's based on meta, it's based on regions. I know the Grand Prix, they're not part of the calendar anymore, but the new formats that they have now for competition and all that to classify for the Pro Tour and the qualifiers and the pro qualifiers, they are changing. The game is evolving. But if you're a grinder of sorts, based on the region, players tend to play certain metas in particular formats. If you're trying to qualify, say, to a Grand, to a PQ or to a Pro Tour, a PT or whatever. So, so you do the grinding, whatever the grinding is happening at the moment, and the metas are kind of set for format depending on the region, because people are like that. But this deck is fair against everyone, You just adapt the cyber based on the region, based on the meta of the region where you're competing to qualify, say. And then when you think in that way, then you start to realize very quickly how powerful this deck is because of the synergies. And it's like, it has great reach, and that's one of the things when you have a because by the way, it's a tribal deck, but it's a very aggressive deck. It's almost like a mono red aggro burn. But it's tribal, and it has a splash of black, and it has the depth, that you can get from elementals, right? And mountain and swamp as your mana bases is very powerful, right? I mean, the type of, because most hate and most, anything like that you have in your sideboard, it's for the most part red and black. So if you understand that you can have a sideboard like that to answer any really scenario under any meta, then you know that you have a powerful set. If you have a strong dynamic that can be very impetuous on turn 4, because my turn 4 on the draw is your fourth turn, and to gauge you on your 4th turn, that's still pretty fast clock, for Magic. And 30% against 50% of the field, that's, hey, count me in. And then and it's a strong position. You got permanents, you got solid graveyard, which you need. You have a hand. It's fast, it's quick. You're not wasting. It's simple. It's just, you have card advantage of sorts. Like super smart, strategic, like what you really need. And then you have all sorts of ways to cause damage, directly, and it's It's just extremely powerful if you understand the reach that that deck has, because it's just like aggro, you know. It's the best. What's the best defense? Some theorists believe that the best defense is offense or offense, right? So this what this deck is at. It's like I'm not letting my gas go, because that's what the deck is. And I have an unlimited supply of gas because the deck has 16 spells that are a burn spell, 4 Boltwaves, 4 lightning bolts, 4 shard volleys, and 4 lava spikes. And they're all 1. Right? Get out of here. And then on top of that, as a sideboard bencher that you cannot remove, it's like the Tim Duncan on the bench waiting for his play, and he's not gonna miss, right? Like, if you understand who Tim Duncan was and stuff, that was the guy that you wanted to have on the bench to come and do what he's supposed to, right? When he wasn't already playing, right? Because he's a starter, but sometimes starters go to the bench and come back, right? But that, when he comes back, you know you mean business. So that's the analogy there. So imagine that. So you have that bencher sitting there in the sideboard, and that is Fury. 4 copies of it, because Fury is just this elemental incarnation that, you know, you evoke for peanuts, and then you cause tremendous damage. And then you can cast it for free with Thunderkin. You know, because double strike 3/3, that when it comes in causes 4 damage direct to any target or planeswalker of your choice. I mean, right? So you can wreak havoc. So do things like that. These are naughty things you're not supposed to do on turn 2 of a game, right? Think about it. Turn 1, I play whatever I want. It doesn't matter. But because I'm smart, I'll do, say, burn. That's 3 points. Turn 2, I evoke incarnation and I blow your board. Turn 2 only could be your first turn, or your third, and I can hit you with 4. You creatures out, and then that evoke sent it to the. Where did that card go? When you evoke it, it goes to the graveyard. It doesn't get exiled. It goes to the graveyard. So then I play Thunderkin, I attack with haste, and then I'm not coming alone. I'm coming with a 3/3 double strike that is gonna hit you with 4 to a planeswalker or another creature that you have there. And then I hit you with 2 plus the double strike that is 3. And that's only turn 2, brother. So I hit you with 1, then I hit you with 4, then I hit you with 4 again, just to double check, and then I'm hitting you with a double strike 3/3. That's gonna be 6 points direct damage if you don't have anyone defending that. Because you don't, because I cleared the board. 4 points, 4 points, there's nothing there. So I'm gonna go through, and I already 3, so I'll give you 6, so that's 9 plus 1, that's 10. So you're telling me that you're minus 10 at the end of turn 2, and I got that state of board and you have no board? And I only have burn spells in my hand? So that's the logic of the deck, right? So think about it, it's very aggressive, right? So it's dominance, right? Total spectrum dominance, like multi-domain spectra dominance. So it's that. So that's essentially what it is. So if you understand what the game is and you understand what I'm talking about, then you know exactly what's what's the zeitgeist, and that is it. That's the play. So, and now think about all the flavors and the themes and the different things that you can do with the sideboards, because it's turn-based, it's matchup-based, you know, it's tournament-based, it's meta-based, you know. It's all sorts, but the format remains, and the base is the foundation you have, and then your sideboard is your bench for game 2, game 3. Because if you understand game theory, you know that when you play tournament theory, you need to have a game plan, right? So, and that's it. So it's basic. And as you know, I'm a mathematician, I'm a philosopher. I write about governance, you know, make music, write books, you know, do my mathematics, and gaming is part of it. You know, I love MTG, Magic the Gathering. It's an incredible way to put into practice all sorts of ideas and thinking. Lateral thinking, parallel thinking, applied thinking, passive thinking, you know, all the critical thinking, objective thinking. Think of anything, then you can think in those terms, mathematically, geometrically, topologically, you know, and think of all the branches, probability, if you're into probability with stats and all that, so you kind of understand this, you know, the field. And then once you can move, right, with the deck of your choice, because you understand it. So it's that. So my deck is the deck to field right now. That deck is the deck to field. If you field that deck, you're gonna be getting great results, similar to when Infect came out, you know, one of the very famous Hall of Famers, you know, Owen, he wrote to the laurels of immortality on the back of an Infect deck. And he had a tremendous season. A couple of years of tremendous results that cemented his time among the greatest and immortal ones. So, because of Infect. So think of the impact of Infect and how someone like Owen understood what it meant, the winning rate, and he applied it to his own personal logic and achieved incredible results using that foundation, that winning rate that came by using that deck, and then strategically as he did. And then if you understand that, then you understand that this deck with this elemental synergy, this tribal dynamic, is much more powerful, magnitudes more powerful than that. If you understand that at a fundamental level for what it means. So, and unlike Eldrazi, it's not bannable. Because you take the Eye of Ugin out, and then, okay, so the deck loses that. It was still, you know, a usable deck for a couple of Pro Tours. But then it lost that luster. Capish? But then, are you going to say that, so you're going to ban Cavern of Souls? Is that what you're saying? It's not the same, right? Because Cavern of Souls is not only for the Eldrazi, it's for a bunch of... And it's not cheating, right? Like 2 mana less, right? And then you can have just those 2 plus Pain, and then in like turn 2 you're paying for 4. This is like, really? Is this what we're doing? So I've you know, a 4 value creature dropped on turn 2. Or some crazy mechanics would allow turn 1 if you had the right spell in Modern. You know, Burn a Kala gives you a mana, and then you got 4 in turn 1, and then you got a drop with Trample and Haste, and it's like a 5/5 that looks at your hand and does all sorts of crazy things. Right? So think of that, but it cannot be banned because I explained the logic to you, and it's not broken like that. It's not you're not bringing big cards quicker. You're bringing organic rate cards that have the ability to do a lot of damage because of the synergies of elementals. You know, that's the difference. So you cannot ban a synergy, but you can ban a crazy broken card that destroys a format or a set or a meta. So that's why you ban Eye of Ugin, mathematically speaking, but you cannot ban Cavern of Souls, say, for example. You know, or like Blood Crypt, or like Bloodstained Mire. You know, the whole game's existence rely on these shocklands to exist in the first place, and these fetch lands. So similar to that vein, Cavern of Souls plays a similar role. So you see, I got into the philosophy and history of Magic, but I can because I've been playing it since 2001, and the game was in its infancy when I was introduced to it. Just a 6-year-old game, you know, or a decade-old game, you know, and now it's what it is. So you gotta understand from that point of view, and this is why I think of that game as it's been a big part of my life. I'm 36 nearly, and that game has been with me since I was 11. So, unlike me, there are many, but I happen to be a modern guy. I play modern, and that's all I play because that's all I understand. People talk nowadays, they talk a lot about Commando, not like Commander. And I'm like, okay, it's cool, I understand the format. It was around when I was playing back in 2001. It existed. I remember Commander back then, but I never liked it. I like one-on-one, or, you know, that's it. So it's the mathematics. I like the mathematics of one-on-one, and say 60 cards, you know, 100, one of each, more multiplayer. It changes the mathematics, and it changes everything, and the cards available are different. So I'm like, I understand it and I respect it, and I can see why people love it, but it's not modern. That's why there are formats. So I know that Commander is out there, and I know there's all sort vintage is out there, and like that, standard, and everything else, historic, and a few others, right? Pauper, etc. But I don't play any of those. In fact, I only play in person, one-on-one, modern. I don't care if your deck is any good. If you play modern, we're gonna have a game. But you're gonna be having a game. The game of your life. Okay. So that's it. That was today's video. Humanity, I love you all with all my heart and all my might. So that's the video. It's a lovely video about Magic the Gathering. Have a lovely day. Elemental tribe. A new synergy.